"Get your hands off my car, you pathetic nobody! Officer, arrest this man immediately!" The wealthy elite of McLean, Virginia, gasped as the local police slammed the quiet, unassuming father against the hood of a dusty sedan. Handcuffs clicked sharply in the autumn air. The arrogant billionaire Aaron Butler smirked, thinking he had just ruined a peasant's life for scratching his Mercedes. But Aaron didn't know the man in cuffs wasn't just another dad. He had just publicly humiliated Gregory Thomas. And Gregory Thomas was the director of the FBI. The afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the pristine asphalt of Oak Ridge Elementary School in McLean, Virginia. This was no ordinary public school, nested in one of the wealthiest zip codes in America. Its parking lot resembled a luxury car dealership. Gleaming Teslas, pristine Range Rovers, and imported Porsche Cayennes lined the drop-off zone, their engines humming in a quiet symphony of extreme, concentrated wealth. The parents who idled in these vehicles were politicians, high-powered lobbyists and corporate titans. Among them sat Gregory Thomas in a dusty 5-year-old Ford Explorer. Gregory did not look like a man of consequence. Dressed in a muted, slightly rumpled grey suit with a loosened tie, he had the weary, hollow-eyed look of a middle-management accountant who had just survived a grueling audit. His hair was beginning to grey at the temples, and his demeanour was entirely unremarkable. No one looking at him would ever guess that just 2 hours prior he had been sitting in the Secure Compartmented Information Facility, SCIF, on the 7th floor of the J. Edgar Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., authorizing a multi-agency counter-terrorism raid overseas. Gregory was the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He commanded over 35,000 special agents and intelligence analysts worldwide. But at 3:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, he was simply a father trying to pick up his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, so they could get ice cream. He had dismissed his standard armed security detail at the edge of the school grounds, insisting, as he always did, on maintaining a semblance of normalcy for his child. The pickup line lurched forward. Gregory checked his rearview mirror, easing his foot off the brake. The lane was incredibly narrow, flanked by illegally parked vehicles whose owners felt the rules did not apply to them. That was when Aaron Butler made his entrance. Aaron was the undisputed alpha of the Oak Ridge Parent-Teacher Association, though he contributed little but money and complaints. A billionaire real estate developer with a reputation for ruthlessness, Aaron drove a matte black Mercedes-Benz AMG G-Wagon, a massive militaristic vehicle that he piloted with aggressive entitlement. He wore a bespoke Italian suit that cost more than Gregory's car, and on his wrist flashed a solid gold Rolex Daytona. Instead of waiting in the line like the rest of the parents, Aaron decided he was in a hurry. He swerved out of the queue, accelerating his heavy G-Wagon down the narrow exit lane, intending to cut off the front of the line and park in the crosswalk. Gregory, following the lawful flow of traffic, was already easing his Ford Explorer around the bend. He didn't see the black behemoth rocketing the wrong way until it was too late. Gregory slammed on his brakes. The Ford shuddered to a halt, but the space was simply too tight. The rear fender of Aaron's speeding G-Wagon scraped against the front bumper of Gregory's stationary Ford. There was a sharp, grating sound of metal and paint exchanging molecular layers, a sickening scrap that echoed across the quiet courtyard. The pickup line instantly froze. Every parent in a 10-yard radius stopped talking, their eyes snapping toward the collision. Gregory sighed heavily, resting his forehead against his steering wheel for a brief moment. He didn't have time for this. He had a briefing with the Attorney General at 6 o'clock. Taking a deep breath to center himself, he shifted the Ford into park, unbuckled his seatbelt, and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. "I apologize for the proximity," Gregory said calmly, his voice steady and polite. "Let's just pull over to the visitor spaces, exchange our insurance information, and clear the lane for the children." Before the words had even fully left his mouth, the door of the G-Wagon flew open. Aaron Butler stepped out, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He didn't look at his car first. He looked at Gregory, his eyes scanning the modest grey suit, the scuffed Rockport shoes, the tired Ford Explorer. In less than a second, Aaron made a calculation. He decided Gregory was a nobody, a peasant, a man to be stepped on. "Exchange insurance?" Aaron roared, his voice echoing off the brick facade of the elementary school. "You think your cut-rate poverty-tier insurance is going to cover custom matte paint on an AMG? Are you out of your mind, you pathetic loser?" Gregory kept his hands visible and relaxed at his sides, a de-escalation tactic he had learned 3 decades ago as a rookie field agent. Sir, you are driving the wrong way down a designated exit lane. Regardless of fault, we need to move the vehicles. I drive where I want, Aaron spat, stepping aggressively into Gregory's personal space. The scent of an overpowering, expensive cologne washed over Gregory. Do you have any idea who I am? I own half the commercial real estate in Fairfax County. I pay the taxes that keep this miserable public school running. You don't tell me to move. You get on your knees and apologize for breathing the same air as my vehicle. Gregory's expression didn't change. Not a muscle twitched. He had stared down cartel bosses in interrogation rooms who were far more intimidating than a spray-tanned billionaire. Sir, lower your voice. There are children present. I will ruin you, Aaron screamed, pointing a manicured finger directly at Gregory's chest. I'm going to make sure you're bankrupt by Friday. He whipped out an iPhone 15 Pro. I'm not calling insurance. I'm calling the police. Let's see how brave you are when you're in the back of a squad car. You insignificant nobody. Aaron Butler didn't dial 911. People like Aaron didn't use emergency dispatchers. They had direct lines to power. He scrolled through his contacts and hit dial. Higgins, Aaron barked into the phone, not bothering with a greeting. It's Butler. I'm at the Oak Ridge pickup. Some lunatic just deliberately rammed my vehicle and is acting aggressive. Yes, right now. Get a cruiser down here immediately with your lights on. I want an arrest. He hung up, sliding the phone back into his tailored pocket with a smug, self-satisfied grin. You're done, Aaron sneered at Gregory. You think you can come into my neighborhood and damage my property? The local police chief plays golf on my private course. The officers in this precinct eat on my dime at the annual gala. They work for me. Gregory remained silent. He leaned casually against the side of his scratched Ford Explorer, crossing his arms. To the untrained eye, he looked defeated. In reality, he was observing. He was taking mental notes. As the director of the FBI, public corruption was one of the primary investigative pillars of his agency. A wealthy civilian openly bragging about owning local law enforcement was like blood in the water. Nothing to say now, Aaron taunted, pacing around the front of the cars. Parents had begun stepping out of their vehicles, holding their phones up to record the drama. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Aaron Butler, and everyone feared his temper. No one recognized Gregory. I'm simply waiting for law enforcement to arrive as you requested, Gregory replied evenly. Though I strongly suggest you rethink the false report you just filed. Filing a false police report is a crime. It's only a crime if they believe you. Aaron laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Look at you. You look like you buy your clothes at a discount warehouse. Look at my car. Look at my watch. Who do you think the police are going to believe? A prominent community leader or a nobody driving a garbage can? Less than 3 minutes later, the wail of sirens pierced the afternoon air. A Fairfax County Police Department cruiser came tearing down the street, tires squealing as it hopped the curb and angled aggressively onto the grass near the pickup line, lights flashing brightly. Out stepped Sergeant Higgins. He was a large man, his uniform stretched tight across his chest, his thumbs resting aggressively in his duty belt. He didn't walk over to the scene of the accident to assess the situation. He walked straight to Aaron Butler. Mr. Butler, Higgins said, his tone entirely too deferential for an officer of the law addressing a civilian. Are you all right, sir? Were you injured? I'm fine, Higgins. No thanks to this maniac, Aaron said, dramatically gesturing toward Gregory. He cut out of line, rammed my car maliciously, and when I asked for his insurance, he threatened me. He said he had a weapon in his vehicle. Gregory's eyebrows raised slightly at the blatant escalation of the lie. The situation had just shifted from a traffic dispute to a potential felony stop. Sergeant Higgins immediately pivoted toward Gregory, his hand dropping to rest on the butt of his sidearm. His entire posture shifted from subservient to tyrannical. Hey, you! Keep your hands where I can see them! He barked loudly, playing to the crowd of recording parents. My hands are visible, officer, Gregory said, his voice carrying the calm, projected authority of a man used to giving orders, not receiving them. There is no weapon in my vehicle. I did not threaten this man. He was driving the wrong direction in the exit lane. There are dozens of witnesses. Shut your mouth! Higgins snapped, advancing on Gregory. I didn't ask for your story. Turn around and put your hands on the hood of your car. Sergeant, Gregory said, his tone dropping an octave, losing the polite civilian veneer and adopting the hard edge of federal law enforcement. I advise you to take a breath, run my plates, and review the security footage from the school cameras before you make a severe career mistake." "Are you threatening a police officer?" Aaron chimed in eagerly from the sidelines. "Did you hear him, Higgins? He's threatening you." "That's it," Higgins growled. "You're going in cuffs. Turn around now, or I will use force." The atmosphere in the school courtyard instantly shifted from scandalous drama to genuine tension. Several mothers gasped, pulling their children back toward their cars. "Sergeant Higgins," Gregory said, standing his ground. He did not turn around. "Under what legal pretext are you detaining me? You have not conducted an investigation, you have not questioned witnesses, and a minor traffic collision on private property does not constitute an arrestable offence under Virginia state law without a warrant." Higgins flushed bright red. He wasn't used to citizens citing legal statutes, let alone with such chilling calmness. "Disorderly conduct, resisting a lawful order, and suspected assault," Higgins shouted. He lunged forward, grabbing Gregory roughly by the shoulder and spinning him around. Gregory let himself be moved. He could have easily broken the sergeant's grip. He kept his close-quarters combat certifications current. But assaulting a uniformed police officer, even a corrupt one, was a line the director of the FBI would not cross in front of an elementary school. He allowed Higgins to slam his chest against the warm hood of the Ford Explorer. "Stop resisting!" Higgins yelled, though Gregory was entirely limp. Click, zip, click, zip. Cold steel bit into Gregory's wrists as the heavy metal handcuffs were ratcheted tightly. Higgins yanked Gregory's arms up painfully high, a dominance tactic designed to cause discomfort and compliance. "Look at him!" Aaron Butler laughed loudly to the crowd, pulling out his own phone to take a photo of the handcuffed man. "That's what happens when you don't know your place in this world. Trash belongs in the garbage." Just as Higgins was violently spinning Gregory back around to face the crowd, the school's heavy double doors swung open. A wave of children spilled out, chattering and laughing. Among them was Lily. She wore a bright yellow backpack, her pigtails bouncing as she skipped toward the pickup line. Then she stopped. Her smile vanished. She saw the flashing police lights. She saw the tall, angry officer. And she saw her father, his hands bound behind his back, standing like a criminal while the other parents stared. "Daddy?" Lily's small voice somehow pierced through the noise of the idling engines and the whispering crowd. Her eyes filled with immediate, terrified tears. "Daddy, what's happening?" Gregory's heart clenched. The stoic mask of the federal director cracked for a fraction of a second, revealing the fiercely protective father beneath. "It's okay, sweetie," Gregory called out, forcing a warm, reassuring smile onto his face, despite the agonizing pull on his shoulders. "Daddy and the police officer are just having a misunderstanding. Everything is perfectly fine. Go stand by Mrs. Gable, okay? I'll be right there." "Shut up," Higgins hissed, shoving Gregory toward the squad car. "You're going to the station. You can call your kid from lockup." Aaron Butler stepped right into Gregory's path as he was being marched to the cruiser. He leaned in close. His voice a venomous whisper meant only for Gregory. "I told you I'd ruin you. By tomorrow you'll be fired from whatever pathetic job you have. I'm going to sue you for everything you own. You'll be homeless, and your crying little brat over there will know her father is a total failure." Gregory stopped. Higgins tried to push him forward, but Gregory planted his feet, suddenly feeling like a mountain of immovable stone. He turned his head and looked directly into Aaron Butler's eyes. The calm, tired father was gone. The look in Gregory's eyes was so cold, so terrifyingly predatory, that Aaron actually took a physical step backward, a cold sweat suddenly breaking out on his neck. "Mr. Butler," Gregory whispered softly, yet the words carried the weight of a falling guillotine. "You have no idea what you have just set in motion." Higgins shoved him into the back of the cruiser, slamming the cage door shut. The lights flashed, the siren wailed, and the police car sped away from the school, leaving Aaron Butler standing on the pavement, suddenly feeling a bizarre, inexplicable sense of dread. The Fairfax County local substation was a drab, cinder-block building smelling faintly of stale coffee, bleach, and old sweat. Gregory was marched through the back doors by Sergeant Higgins, his hands still tightly cuffed behind his back, the metal biting painfully into his skin. "We got a live one," Higgins announced to the desk sergeant, a bored-looking veteran named Miller who was slowly typing on a greasy keyboard. "Assault, destruction of property, and resisting arrest. Hold him in interrogation room 2. I'm writing up the felony charges." "Felony?" Miller raised an eyebrow, finally looking up. He took one look at Gregory's tailored, albeit dusty suit and calm demeanor. "He doesn't look like a felony assault. He attacked Aaron Butler," Higgins said pointedly. Miller's expression shifted instantly from boredom to complete understanding. The entire precinct knew Aaron Butler. He bought them new body armor last year, and in exchange, the precinct looked the other way when his construction crews violated noise ordinances or when his teenage son was caught driving drunk. "Say no more," Miller muttered, grabbing a set of keys. "Take him to room 2. Take his shoelaces and his belt." Gregory was strip-searched of his personal effects, though Higgins notably failed to find the heavily encrypted, government-issued satellite phone concealed in a hidden lining of Gregory's suit jacket. They tossed his wallet onto the desk without opening it, a catastrophic procedural failure. Had they bothered to open it, they would have seen the solid gold badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and an ID card signed by the President of the United States. Instead, they shoved him into a windowless concrete interrogation room. They didn't remove the handcuffs. They chained his cuffs to an iron ring bolted to the steel table. 20 minutes later, the door swung open. It wasn't a detective. It was Aaron Butler. Civilian presence in a secure holding area was highly illegal, but Higgins stood right behind him, arms crossed, acting as a personal bodyguard for the billionaire. "Well, well, well," Aaron gloated, pulling up a metal chair and sitting backwards on it, facing Gregory. "Not so tough now, are we? My lawyer is upstairs talking to the captain right now. We're going for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the weapon being your piece of trash car. That's a minimum of 5 years in state prison." Gregory sat perfectly still. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the room. A small red light blinked. It was recording. "Excellent. Sergeant Higgins," Gregory addressed the officer, completely ignoring the billionaire. "Are you aware that allowing a civilian into a secure holding area to intimidate a suspect is a direct violation of police department policy, as well as a deprivation of my civil rights under the 14th Amendment?" Higgins scoffed. "You don't have any rights right now, buddy. You're a criminal." "I see," Gregory said softly. "And Mr. Butler, I assume you have compensated this officer in some way for this extraordinary level of personal service?" Aaron laughed, a booming, arrogant sound. "Compensated? I own him. I own the captain. I fund the pension balls. I can do whatever I want to whoever I want in this town. And I chose to make an example out of you. You are nothing. I am untouchable." Gregory nodded slowly, committing the exact phrasing to memory. "Untouchable. That is a dangerous word, Mr. Butler. Historically, it usually precedes a very steep fall." Aaron stood up, kicking his chair aside violently. "Keep talking philosophy while you rot in a cell. I'm going home to drink a scotch that costs more than your life. Higgins, let him sweat here until tomorrow morning. No food, no water." Higgins nodded subserviently. "Yes, sir." They turned to leave. "Wait," Gregory said. His voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a bizarre, commanding frequency that made both men stop in their tracks. "Under the laws of the United States, I am entitled to one phone call. I would like to make it now." Aaron smirked, looking over his shoulder. "Let him make it, Higgins. Let him call his pathetic public defender. It'll be funnier when they tell him he's screwed." Higgins unchained Gregory from the table, though he left the handcuffs on. He placed a dirty precinct landline phone on the table and hit the speaker button. "Go ahead. Make your call. We're listening." Gregory leaned forward. He didn't dial a local 703 area code. With painful slowness due to the cuffs using his knuckle, he dialed a 202 Washington, D.C. area code. He dialed a secure, unlisted number that only 12 people in the world possessed. The phone rang exactly once. It didn't ring a second time. A sharp digital click echoed from the speakerphone, followed immediately by a crisp, hyper-professional voice. "SIOC command, Agent Vance speaking. Authentication required." Sergeant Higgins frowned. "The hell kind of law firm is SIOC?" he muttered. Aaron Butler just rolled his eyes, assuming it was some cheap automated answering service. Gregory leaned closer to the microphone. His voice, previously quiet and subdued, suddenly snapped with absolute authority. "This is Director Gregory Thomas. Authentication code. Whiskey Tango 79er actual. I am declaring a Code 4 emergency. Initiate protocol ironclad." On the other end of the line, the sound of keyboard clacking stopped instantly. The silence was deafening. Then Agent Vance's voice returned, stripped of its automated monotone and filled with urgent adrenaline. Code verified. Director Thomas, we have your GPS coordinates pinging at a local municipal police substation in Fairfax County. Are you under duress, sir? Do we need to dispatch hostage rescue? Negative on HRT, Gregory said calmly. I have been unlawfully detained by local law enforcement officers under the direction of a civilian named Aaron Butler. I am currently in handcuffs in Interrogation Room 2. Dispatch the Washington Field Office Quick Reaction Force. I want the Deputy Director on site. I want agents from the Public Corruption Unit, and I want a federal prosecutor from the DOJ lock down this entire precinct. Understood, Director. WFO tactical units are wheels up. ETA is 6 minutes. Do you require immediate physical extraction? Negative. I will wait for the cavalry. Secure the perimeter upon arrival. No one leaves. Thomas out. Gregory nudged the receiver off the hook with his chin, ending the call. The dial tone hummed loudly in the small concrete room. For 10 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. Aaron Butler stared at the phone, his brain desperately trying to process the words he had just heard. Director? Command? Tactical units? He looked at Higgins, seeking reassurance. Higgins was pale. The ruddy, aggressive flush had completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. His hands were shaking slightly. He looked down at Gregory, his eyes wide with a sudden, paralyzing terror. Who did you just call? Higgins stammered, his voice cracking. I called my office, Gregory said, finally leaning back in his chair. He looked up at the two men, and for the first time since the parking lot, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. I believe I mentioned earlier that you were making a severe career mistake, Sergeant. As for you, Mr. Butler... Gregory shifted his gaze to the billionaire, whose arrogant swagger had completely evaporated. You wanted to know who I was. You're about to find out. It's a bluff. Aaron forced out a laugh, though it sounded shrill and panicked. He's bluffing. He called a buddy to sound tough. Higgins, shut him up. But Higgins wasn't moving. He slowly backed away toward the door, his eyes darting frantically. He said Washington Field Office. That's the FBI. Don't be an idiot, Aaron snapped, his face flushing red again with panic-driven anger. The director of the FBI doesn't drive a 5-year-old Ford and get into fender benders at a public school. Actually, Gregory corrected smoothly, I do. The Ford is registered to a federal fleet pool, heavily up-armored, and possesses a classified communications suite. It's designed to blend in. It appears it worked a little too well. Before Aaron could argue further, a sound echoed from outside the windowless room. It started as a low rumble, then grew into a roar. It wasn't the high-pitched wail of police sirens. It was the deep, synchronized growl of a dozen heavy V8 engines, accompanied by the screech of heavy tires slamming onto the pavement outside the precinct. Then came the shouting. Outside the Fairfax County substation, absolute chaos had descended. 12 black, unmarked Chevrolet Suburbans had jumped the curbs, forming an impenetrable steel barricade around the building. Before the vehicles had even fully stopped, the doors flew open. Over 40 heavily armed federal agents poured out. They wore tactical vests emblazoned with bold yellow letters. FBI. They carried M4 carbines, their faces set in grim, unyielding expressions. This wasn't a standard visit, this was the rapid response team, and they had just been told their director was being held hostage by corrupt local cops. Federal agents! Nobody move! Hands in the air! The shouts echoed through the front lobby of the precinct. Desk Sergeant Miller jumped up, spilling hot coffee all over his uniform. He reached instinctively for his sidearm, but before his fingers even brushed the leather holster, 3 red laser sights danced across his chest. "Drop your hand away from the weapon! Now!" a tactical agent roared, leveling his rifle. Miller threw his hands toward the ceiling, terrified. Through the front doors strode Deputy Director Sarah Jenkins. She was a fiercely intelligent woman who commanded absolute respect, and right now she looked murderous. She bypassed the terrified local officers in the lobby and marched straight down the hallway toward the interrogation rooms, flanked by 4 tactical agents. Inside room 2, Aaron Butler and Sergeant Higgins heard the heavy boots marching down the corridor. The door to the interrogation room didn't just open, it was violently kicked inward by an agent in tactical gear. "Clear!" the agent shouted, sweeping the room with his weapon. 2 more agents flooded in, instantly surrounding Aaron and Higgins. "Hands on the wall! Do it now!" an agent screamed at Higgins. The sergeant didn't hesitate. He practically threw himself against the concrete block, sobbing in sheer terror as his duty weapon was stripped from him and his own handcuffs were violently slapped onto his wrists. Aaron Butler stood frozen in the center of the room. "Wait! Stop!" he yelled, holding up his hands. "I'm Aaron Butler. I own this precinct. You can't do this to me." An agent grabbed Aaron by his $4,000 suit jacket, spun him around, and slammed him face first into the wall right next to Higgins. "You don't own a damn thing right now, sir," the agent growled, securing his hands. Deputy Director Jenkins walked into the room. She surveyed the scene. The terrified billionaire, the weeping local cop, and finally, the man sitting in the center of the room, chained to a table. Her stern face softened slightly. "Director Thomas, are you uninjured, sir?" "I'm fine, Sarah," Gregory replied calmly, "though I would appreciate it if someone could locate the key to these handcuffs. They're rather tight." An agent immediately stepped forward, using a universal master key to unlock the cuffs. Gregory rubbed his raw wrists, standing up slowly. He adjusted his suit jacket, smoothed his tie, and reclaimed the aura of absolute, terrifying authority that he had hidden away for the afternoon. Aaron Butler, his cheek pressed against the cold concrete wall, turned his head to look at Gregory. His eyes were wide with a horror so profound it bordered on madness. The realization crashed down upon him like a collapsing skyscraper. The man he had screamed at, the man he had mocked for being poor, the man he had unlawfully handcuffed and threatened to destroy. It was the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. "You," Aaron choked out, his voice a pathetic, trembling squeak. You're him." Gregory walked over to the billionaire. He didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He simply looked down at Aaron with the cold, clinical detachment of a scientist examining a particularly unpleasant insect. "Mr. Butler," Gregory said quietly, "you told me earlier that you were going to ruin me. You told me you were untouchable. Let me explain something to you. I command an agency with a $10 billion annual budget. I have forensic accountants who can trace a single dirty penny through a dozen offshore shell corporations. I have public corruption investigators who specialize in dismantling arrogant men who think money puts them above the law." Gregory leaned in an inch closer. "You are not untouchable, Mr. Butler. And as of this exact moment, you have my complete, undivided attention." The fallout was biblical. The FBI did not just leave that night with their director, they left with the precinct's entire server banks, physical files, and the hard drives of every computer in the building. Sergeant Higgins was not fired. Firing would have been a mercy. He was indicted by a federal grand jury within 48 hours for violating Title 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Because he had used a firearm to enforce an unlawful detention, he was facing up to 10 years in federal prison. In a desperate bid for a plea deal, Higgins turned state's evidence, singing like a canary about every bribe, every free meal, and every illegal favor he and the precinct captain had ever done for Aaron Butler. But the hammer that fell on Aaron Butler was far heavier. True to his word, Gregory Thomas unleashed the full might of the FBI's white-collar crime division upon Butler's real estate empire. When arrogant men believe they are above the law, they invariably leave a paper trail of their arrogance. The FBI raided Aaron's corporate headquarters the following Monday. They found rampant tax evasion, massive wire fraud, and clear evidence of bribery of local zoning officials. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division, happily teaming up with the Bureau, froze all of Aaron's domestic and offshore bank accounts. His assets were seized under federal civil forfeiture laws. The matte black Mercedes AMG G-Wagon that had started it all was impounded on a flatbed tow truck, while local news helicopters filmed the event live. His custom Italian suits were left behind in his multi-million-dollar mansion, which was seized by the bank after his funds were locked down. Aaron Butler, the billionaire who boasted he could ruin anyone, was left completely destitute. When he finally walked out of the federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, months later, he was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting grey suit, ironically similar to the one Gregory Thomas had worn on the day of the incident. Aaron was out on bail, awaiting a trial that carried a maximum sentence of 25 years in federal lockup. He had no friends left. The elite society of McLean had abandoned him the second the feds showed up. As for Gregory Thomas, his life returned to normal almost immediately. The incident at the precinct never made the public news cycle. The FBI kept internal matters of national security figures strictly classified. 6 months later, on a crisp spring afternoon, Gregory was back in the pickup line at Oak Ridge Elementary School. He was driving the same dusty Ford Explorer, the bumper slightly dented from where the Mercedes had hit it. He wore a modest suit, and he looked just as tired as he always did after a long day of briefing the president. The bell rang, and the doors opened. Lily came skipping out, her backpack bouncing. She ran to the car and threw the door open, hopping into the passenger seat. "Hi, Daddy," she beamed, leaning over to hug him. "Hi, sweetheart." Gregory smiled, his eyes crinkling warmly. "How was school?" "Good, but look." She pointed eagerly out the window. "There's a new crossing guard." Gregory looked up. Standing in the crosswalk, wearing a bright yellow reflective vest and holding a stop sign, was a man performing community service as a condition of his bail agreement. It was Aaron Butler. He looked exhausted, humiliated, and utterly defeated. Gregory caught his eye through the windshield. Aaron froze, lowering the stop sign slightly. He didn't glare, he didn't sneer. He simply looked away in profound shame, stepping back to allow the dusty Ford Explorer to pass through the crosswalk unimpeded. Gregory Thomas put the car in drive, smiling softly at his daughter. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go get some ice cream." Karma, as it turned out, drove a very reliable 5-year-old Ford. If you love this story of extreme karma and ultimate justice, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true-to-life revenge stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. What would you have done if you were in Gregory's shoes? Would you have revealed your identity right away, or let the arrogant billionaire dig his own grave just like he did? Let me know down in the comments below. I read every single one. Sharing this video with your friends helps the channel grow and brings more amazing, dramatic stories right to your screen. Until next time, remember, arrogance always comes with a price, and you never truly know who you're messing with. Stay safe, stay humble, and thanks for watching.